right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the River SDSU. My name is Jason. I'm part of the team here, and I'm just glad you guys are here tonight. We've been talking through the book of Nehemiah. We're going to continue to do that. Tonight's going to look a little bit different than what we normally do because of where we are in the book. But we were talking last week about the rise from apathy. And we talked about how God sometimes sent people like Nehemiah to shake us out of our indifference and get us out of that place so that we can answer the call and go do something great with our life. You guys are all created to do something great. You're going to hear that over and over and over from me because I believe with all my heart that when God created you, He created you with specific intent. And so we're going to keep on talking about that. But tonight, what we really want to get into tonight is this idea of what lens are you wearing? That's really the main idea of tonight's conversation as we get into the scriptures. What lens are you wearing? And that's going to make a little bit more sense once we get through the rest of the night. But if you start out in chapter 3 of Nehemiah, we've already talked about Nehemiah's position. He was a cupbearer to the king in the palace. We understand the condition of Jerusalem is defeated, right? The walls are broken, the gates are burned. They're a reproach to the people. Even though they've been able to establish the temple, they don't have the rest of the city. And so there's still like a reproach. There's still a shame. The rest of the nations kind of look at them like, you're not God's people. Y'all beat down, broken, busted up, right? And so Nehemiah comes and kind of awakes them out of apathy. And we talked about some leadership principles. We talked about how Nehemiah came with a strategy, how he came with a plan and a purpose. We talked about how sitting before God long enough to let God speak to you the things that there's no way you could have otherwise known. Nehemiah was not a carpenter. He was not a mason by trade. He was somebody who knew how to sip the Kool-Aid really well. But somehow, sitting alone with God long enough, God spoke to him about the very specifics of rebuilding the city. And that's what happens when we sit alone with God. And so Nehemiah shows up on the scene and he goes and does this thing at night when everybody else is sleeping. We talk about leaders go above and beyond. He goes around while everybody's knocked out. He actually looks at the condition for himself. He investigates the full matter. Once he takes an honest assessment of what's going on for himself, then he rallies the people together and he says, listen guys, I've seen this is the condition. Let us arise and go build. And he says, let us go do this. And by the way, God's hand is with us. And he brings people back to the ultimate, which is that God is with us. If God is for us, who could be against us? And the answer to that question is nobody. And we got to remember that as God's children, nobody can stand in the way of the things that God has called and designed us to do. And so Nehemiah rallies the troops to get them to understand that, and then they begin the work. They begin to build. And that brings us to chapter 3 of Nehemiah. And it says, then Eliashib, the high priest, arose with his brothers, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it, hung its doors. They consecrated the wall to the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of Hananel. And next to him, the men of Jericho built. And next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. Now the sons of Hassanah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. Next to them, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, made repairs. And next to him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, the son of Bana, also made repairs. And it goes over this whole entire chapter, talks about all these people and all the things that they were doing. And it names them by name. And it names all of their specifics about what is going on. What is the big picture here? What's happening in this moment? Nehemiah comes in, wakes them from their slumber and says, hey you, your life matters. Let's go do something about it. And they say, okay, cool. But unlike most of us who come here on Sunday and say, yeah, that makes sense. High five for Jesus. Let's go get pizza. Unlike most of us, they actually said, okay, bet. Give me a hammer. Give me some nails. Give me some of that concrete. Show me where to work. Let me get cracking on this because now I realize that there's a real problem, but God is more real than the problem, and we can really bring a solution. And we, for some reason, are used to being entertained. We're used to gathering for all types of entertainment, even church is a form of entertainment for a lot of people. And we're used to that. But what we're not used to is allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to us in such a radical way that it begins to alter the course of our thinking, ultimately changing the steps that we take with our life. I just want you to think about, when's the last time the Holy Spirit interrupted your life? And you totally submitted and said, okay, God, you can reroute everything for me. I mean, we're so organized and so planned, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. God's a God of order, and God tells us to plan, and He tells us to do the best we can to be good stewards, but all of that is under the submission of God and being willing to let God take the reins. When was the last time the Holy Spirit interrupted your life like what happened with these people? And they actually picked up the hammer. I mean, I guess that's a good question tonight. Have you picked up the hammer yet? Have you grabbed your tool belt and said, let's go? There's going to be some work. It's going to be inconvenient, but let's go. Point number one tonight, if you are taking notes, is that many hands make light work. Many hands make light work. See, there were so many people there, but Nehemiah stirred them up for them to understand that they all mattered. And some probably did a little bit more, some probably did a little bit less, and it was probably pertaining to their actual abilities, but they did something for it. And if we're going to see God do something radical in the community that He's called us, then it requires many hands. It just does. Look, just because the rule, the principle is 80-20. Look, how many of y'all heard the 80-20 principle, right? 20% of the people do 80% of the work. The other 80% bring the headaches, and they're lazy. This is how it is, but it doesn't need to stay that way. That's just an assessment that's happened over time. That's an assessment that's happened over time of most people's habits. We can change that. You have the power to change that. Nobody can change it except you. But you can change that. You can break that. You can break that law. You can break that rule. You can change all of that. But that's the current status quo. The 80-20 rule. Why is it like that? Why is it like that? I mean, for us, man, if you really believe, maybe one Sunday night, what we'll do is we'll just have like a dream building session. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll just come in here and we'll just have a dream building session. Forget talking through exegeting scripture. We'll just sit together as believers and say, man, what has God called you to do with your life? Like, is there something that will stir you to greatness to say, I'm willing to change? You know, to grab a hold of like what God has called you to do. It's the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that wakes you up early, the thing that makes you go when everyone else stops, that thing. What is that? Because God's given every one of you that. For them, it was rebuilding Jerusalem. And so they're looking at this city and they begin to rebuild, but they actually began. They actually picked up the tools. They actually began to work. Have you picked up your hammer yet? Do you have a tool belt on? It's interesting that Nehemiah doesn't have an ego. Nehemiah doesn't walk up in the city and say, hey guys, I'm Nehemiah. I roll with the king. I got lots of influence. You should just step out of the way and I'll handle this. Let me do all the work. No. Put that down. That's my hammer. Nehemiah doesn't do that. Nehemiah is incredible at delegating. Nehemiah walks in and immediately starts looking to delegate. He doesn't say, I got to handle all this. I got to do everything. It's all on me. It's all on me. It's all on me. He walks in and says, here's all the work, but if we come together, because he's an incredible leader, if we come together, we can accomplish something great. And I don't know if you've ever ran across leaders, maybe your boss, maybe people you've worked for before, maybe it's you, but if you think about your life, like, are you good at delegating, and are you good at being the person that gets delegated to? What lens are you looking at life through? A lot of times when people say, here's an opportunity for you, you don't see this opportunity. You see it as another reason to complain. You see it as another thing, another burden, another thing that just wears you down and doesn't bring joy to your life. But Nehemiah delegates all this work to the other people. How many of you guys know who Vince Lombardi is? What is he known for? Yeah, head coach of the Green Bay Packers, had 5 NFL titles, and 2 of them were Super Bowls, and the other ones weren't even called Super Bowl yet. He's an incredible coach. And before that, he was like some type of assistant offensive coach with the New York Giants. But he really is known for what he did with the Green Bay Packers. And at this guy's death, you saw that there were hundreds and hundreds of athletes who came to his funeral. And they came to his funeral. Now, Vince Lombardi, if you know anything about this guy, he was not the soft guy. He was not the, oh man, just hope you do better out there, and just keep your head up, you're going to be okay. That was not Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi was like yelling at his players. He was like, because he was pushing them to the max because he knew he saw greatness in them, and he pushed them to push that greatness out. And it may look rude and mean and all those other things from the outside, but even those players who looked like they had been mistreated by him all came to his funeral. And the reason is is because that was a man in their life that caused them to have to go the extra mile to become what they could become in their life. And Vince Lombardi was a great man who left a great legacy, but it was just football. What does football mean in light of eternity? And what is God calling you to do? What is he saying about your life? What are people going to do at your funeral? Are people going to come because you were that friend who represented Christ well, and you never let them settle for good as the enemy of great? You always pushed them in the direction that God was calling them to go. Because at the end of the day, we need everybody. One of the things that he said is, this was Vince Lombardi quote, he said, the difference between mediocrity and greatness is the feeling that those guys have for each other. And what he was talking about is the family environment that they had created on the team. Even though he was very, harsh about the way he coached and drilled them the way that he did, he said the difference between the mediocrity and greatness on the football field, and he had fruit on the tree. He could talk about it. He wasn't just somebody with an opinion. He had something to stand on and talk from. He had a platform. He said it was the feeling that those guys had. What was he really saying? He said, when you have real community, you can accomplish great things. When you have real relationships, you can actually do things that you cannot achieve on your own independently. And even though Nehemiah was an incredible leader, he was a great guy with lots of influence and lots of favor from God, he could not walk up in Jerusalem and rebuild those walls and put the gates up on his own. And he knew that. So what did it require? It required a Nehemiah to say, here's what God's saying. And it required a bunch of people who would submit to God and say, okay, God, you've clearly brought Nehemiah. You've awakened us to the problem, and we want to be a part of the solution. And people who submitted to God and said, let's do it. Didn't it require both? Vince Lombardi walk on the football field. He's the head coach, and he's out here training these guys and drilling them and dogging them and all that stuff. But what if there were no players? Then what is Vince Lombardi doing? He's auditioning for the psych ward, right? Because if he's out there just yelling at himself and there's no players on the field, he's going to look like a crazy man. And so it required a coach, and it required the team, and it required them working together cohesively to accomplish the same goal. So many hands make light work. So I want to challenge you about, what is God saying to you in your life? With your family, your neighborhood, your community, the river, SDSU, this campus. What is God saying to you about your involvement? I'll talk about that another time. All right. Very good. Point number 2. Again, tonight's a little different because the whole chapter 3 is just talking about all these different things of people, their names, and what they did and where they worked. But point number 2 is everyone had a place to work. Point number 2 is everyone had a place to work. If you look at verse 21, verse 23 through 24, verse 26, verse 28 through 30, you're going to see specifics about their location. You see the words next to him, and next to them, or next to that, or the next section, or beside him, beyond them. And those phrases occur about 28 times in this chapter. That's specific. What does that mean? That means that it's not enough to come here and hang out and say, that's my chair. That's not what he was saying. He specifically assigns all these people a particular place on the wall of Jerusalem as they rebuilt the wall. They had a place. Everyone had a place. Every person belonged. There was a place for them to work. And specifically, where was their place? According to those verses, if you look at this chapter 3 and you look at those places I just mentioned, they were near their homes. Nehemiah looked at them and said, hey, I need you to work at this particular part of the wall because it's near your home. Now, why would Nehemiah do that? I think there may be a few reasons here. We're going to take a look at a few of them to kind of consider. But Nehemiah, again, he's such an incredible leader, but he has a place for them, and it's specific. It's not just this wandering. In church we do that, right? You just wander in and you show up enough times, we're like, hey, you should just do this. Hey, you should just do that. But it should be more specific than that about what God is doing in your life. All right, so first of all, people were assigned to the sections of the wall near their homes. And I think the reason is because they'd be more personally involved and motivated. Because they'd be more personally involved and motivated. Think about it. This whole tornado thing that's happening all over the place. We see it on the news and we're like, oh man, I feel bad for those people. We may even say a prayer for them. You may even get online and send a donation. How many of you got in your cars and drove out there and made a difference? Right, the answer is 0. And the reason for that is not because you're an awful person, necessarily, but you're not as committed because you don't know that community. You don't know them. There's no personal attachment there. There's no other motivation because you don't have any relationships established or built there. And I think when you look at what American church has done, we've said the Hi-Bye Sunday, fake smiles, and we've done it in our own communities. But Nehemiah understood that if we start with the places that are near and dear to our hearts, there'll be more commitment and more motivation. And so I want to ask the question, is God is calling you out to be a believer and a leader in this world. You're called to be light and you're called to be salt in this world. God has said that's who we are in your community. What part of the wall are you on? I think one of the blessings and curses of San Diego is that every single night of the week you can be at a Christian event if you wanted to. With all the different churches and ministries and things going on, you could be every night of the week. Oh, I'm over here. Now I'm over there. Now I'm over here. Now I'm over there. But the curse of that is you got no commitment to a particular place that God is calling you to make a difference. You're just all over the place. Because what are you doing? It's all about you. Well, I need to be there so I can be satisfied. I need to be there because it makes me feel good. And I need to feel like I belong. And so we're out there and we're just experiencing, it's like eating snacks all day instead of having an actual meal in your life. And it's not healthy for you. But Nehemiah assigns them a place that is specific to the place where they live. So if I were to ask you today, based on your physical location, how you doing? Are you rebuilding the wall? Are you spreading hope? Are you sharing God's love? Are you building a relationship that's real? You know, this week alone, I met a guy today who's struggling with homosexuality, and he's trying to follow God, and he's confronting his sin, and he's saying, God, I want to do the right thing, and he's confronting it head on, and he's getting brothers in Christ who are helping him build good boundaries and, you know, do the right thing. You know, and I got to like just spend some time with him and like love on him and build a relationship with him and talk him through some of those things. I had, you know, which is right in my backyard. I was at the park next to my house and I was just hanging out with my daughters, but I was able to have intentional conversation where God had me. Where I live right now, my neighbor, she had been hurt in the church before. She was in a relationship with a worship leader who was not really following God, and so a lot of bad things happened. She's got a bad taste in her mouth, and so she left him, and they ended up having some real issues, and now she's doing her own thing, and she's just kind of distant from God, and God placed me right there next to her, and my family right there next to her, and now we're building relationships, and we're talking about God, and we're building purposeful relationships to be able to build that bridge back. You know, and it's cool, like God's doing all these things, but he has me where I am right now, and I've got to see my part of the wall. And I'm not saying that to brag, I'm saying that to say that I'm doing it too. I'm saying, God, you know, you placed me where I am, and so this part of the wall, near my house, my physical location, like what am I doing to make a difference? Who am I building relationships with? Everyone had a place to work. Secondly, I think that, you know, not having to travel to another part of the city would waste of time. I mean, imagine if, you know, you lived in Escondido and we said, you know, your job is going to be down in National City. And so what we need you to do every day is go from Escondido to National City to go do this ministry job. I mean, number one, I think that Nehemiah understanding Jerusalem and the city, it would have been a waste of time to take this guy from where he was to send him over there where there's already somebody that could be doing the work over there. So Nehemiah understands that he's going to execute this as a good steward of time in addition to that. I mean, I know today we drive a lot. San Diego is one of those cities where like it's just all over the place. When I first moved to San Diego, I was blown away. I was like, this is just weird. Like you got to drive everywhere to get anywhere because it's a big stretched out city. It's very different. But what are we doing driving all over the place all the time? And I'm just asking the question, to be honest. Like, why are we driving all over the place all the time in ministry when I guarantee that 90% of the people within a mile to 2 to 3 miles of our house don't know you or don't know Jesus? You know what I mean? I mean, like, man, what's stopping us from saying, now I'm going to invest my backyard? Instead of wasting all this time driving all over the place, I want to spend some time right here and reach these people right here because it's close to me. And so I'm more committed because my family is here. I want to have a good community, but also because instead of wasting my time driving all over the city where there's a lot of other people, a lot of other ministries, I want to spend some time where God has placed me and be a good steward of my time. You know why? You can't commit to a place. You can't commit to going to Escondido every day and really be engaged in people's lives. Can you? If you don't live there, how engaged can you be? How involved can you be? What if you got a family? What if you got kids? How involved could you really be? You can't. I'm just asking these questions because, like, sometimes I almost get anti-church. And don't get mad at me. Don't throw rocks at me. When I say that, I just mean, like, I get frustrated about, like, the American Christianity. Like, this is what we do Sunday. Yeah, put on a good show. Hey, say a few good things. Have a great week. And you know, see you next week. I get really frustrated about that. You know, I don't say, you know, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think this is important, but it's a percent of what we're supposed to do. And it's a smaller percent than a larger percent, right? The larger percent is like us living on mission every day. And I'm just saying, I just want to throw it out there like, man, are we doing it? You're not even missing the journey. All right. Also, a third point about this is in case of an attack, they wouldn't be tempted to leave their post. They would stay and protect their families. Nehemiah placed them strategically where they were at a place, and it was for a reason. It was because it was near to home. It was being good steward of their time, instead of wasting time doing all this traveling. And also in case of opposition. Opposition is going to come. You will never say, God, here's my life, without the enemy coming and trying to push you back. It's going to happen every single time. But when it's your family and when it's your backyard, you'll stand and fight. But when it's somebody else's, maybe not. You do the Christian thing and you walk away and say, I'm praying for you to get better. Hope things get better for you guys over there. Let me know how it turns out. But when it's your home, when it's your relationship, when it's your marriage, when it's your kids, when it's your community, when it affects you personally, you'll stand and fight. Because people have been known to give their life for a cause. I think the fourth thing is that the whole task would become a family effort, utilizing all of the available talent. See, when Nehemiah placed them strategically where they were, he saw the big picture. He knew that if he placed them there, the whole family could be involved. Family is the most important structure God created. God created family way before he created this. God created family first because it's the cornerstone of a strong society, the cornerstone of a strong church. And if you don't have a strong family, we've all experienced the pain of dysfunction in our families. But it doesn't mean it has to continue. And Nehemiah knew that if he placed them strategically where they were, the whole family could get involved. You ever done a project with somebody or a group of people over a period of time that caused a little bit of struggle? What happened when you came out on the other side of that struggle with those people? It's usually some type of bond, right? Like, it's almost like you get through this experience together, so now you have that in common. It's like it brought you together. Like, you just come out like stronger and more united. You can imagine all these families working on their part of the wall in Jerusalem with their husband, their wife, their kids, doing what everyone could do to contribute to make it happen. But it's a project, and they're putting their whole life into it. Because for 20 years, they faced opposition, and it didn't work. And finally, God sends in Nehemiah and stirs up some fresh hope, and they start doing it. And now they're going through this experience together. It wasn't just working on a project. This project meant a lot. This project was fulfilling prophecy. This project was overcoming the odds. This project was when everybody said there's 3 strikes against you, God says it doesn't matter because I'm still for you, and we're going to have a victory. See, when you go through stuff like that with family and community, you come outside stronger, and you come outside more committed to one another. And my fear is that people come to church Sunday after Sunday not committed to anything, not united with anyone, committed to their own self only, committed to their own cause only, totally missing what God designed us to do as community. I love every morning going to Starbucks and hanging out with you guys who come. I think it's incredible. I'm not knocking you if you can't come. This is not a judgment. This is not me manipulating you. I'm just saying genuinely. For those of you guys who come on throughout the week at Starbucks, I think it's so incredible. I think it's the closest thing we have to experiencing what the early church did, to reprioritize your life to meet and do life together and share life together and make it important. And, this kind of bond comes from those types of things. We become family through that. You don't become family by high-fiving somebody for an hour once a week. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. even if you love Jesus, even if you read your Bible, even if you pray, even if you're sincere, because God designed us the way that we are with a brain and with emotions and to be in relationship. And so every time you violate that relationship law, then you disconnect yourself from experiencing those things. I think that these are some of the reasons why being on mission matters. I think these are some of the reasons why we should consider our life and always be evaluating. There's this thing we say called PDCA. Plan, do, check, and adjust. And in our own life, with God, it should be the same way. We plan, and then we go out and we do the things that God calls us to do, and then we check them and say, did this work? Was this what God was saying? And then we make adjustments, and then we do it again, and we just keep rotating that in our life with God. And God teaches us and grows us and develops us. But we got to fight for that because, if we're not on mission, then who is? Satan's on mission. He's a lot smarter than you. He's got a better strategy than you do. And he's been doing it for a lot longer. So if we don't unite and come together, then we just sit in ruins like Jerusalem. We come here and pretend like everything's cool, because maybe at the moment your home is okay. But we lay defeated as a family. And I just see it all over the city, and I'm like, man, why don't we just come together and do what they did? It's interesting when you look at the Bible, you see the church of Ephesus or the church of Corinth. You see the church of that city. You don't see on every 2 blocks a different church in that particular city or location. And I know that there's reasons why we have to do that today, right? Because some people are wackos in what they believe, right? They're doctrinally off the wall, and we have to defend the faith. But, I just dream of a day when we're united. I just dream of a day when, we just put all the nonsense down, just do life together. Let's just go to the beach with like 1,000 people. Let's just roll deep and let's just go worship and share the gospel and just hang out. Why can't we just go do that? Why can't we just mob and take over an entire block one day and just go love on people and give things away and oh, you're from that church. If our name's not on the top, we can't participate. Interesting. Anyway, this is important. Here's why. Last week when we were at Memorial Day party hanging out at Tiger's house, we had a great time. So for those of you who were there, we had a great time. And after we all left, there was an incident that took place about a block down the road. There was a young person highly intoxicated, and they had to call the ambulance because it was a very bad situation. Tiger posted something about it on Facebook, and immediately Pastor Vic from the Body Church called him because that's his neighborhood. Because he's committed to that area. And as a believer, he was doing his work on the wall. He was at his place. He didn't say, well, find out if he goes to my church. He didn't say, find out if he's willing to come to my church. If he can come to the church first, we'll help him. No, it was just, he's working at his part on the wall and he's committed there. And because he found out there was another problem, he wanted to go fix that part of the wall. And that's how we should be. As believers, we should just always be knowing our community and be involved and be invested. All right, here's the problem. I'm going to finish up. The problem is that we all see through different lenses. Have you ever been to a movie that was a 3D movie? When you go in, you can pick up the glasses. All right? You ever been to a 3D movie? Anybody? Okay, very good. Just make sure, because I don't want to talk to you. You don't know what I'm saying. You can pick up those glasses before you go in, and you can sit down. And you can sit those glasses right next to you and watch the same movie that everybody else with the glasses is watching. You can see 2 different things. The people with the glasses are freaking out. They're like trying to dodge stuff because it's coming at them, right? And you're sitting there because you don't have the glasses on, just like, what? This looks weird and grainy. You're looking at the same thing. The problem is you're looking through a different lens. And when you look through the right lens, you ever see things correctly. And so I want to talk about 4 lenses real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up and get out of here. But I just want to encourage you guys, if you don't hear anything else today, I want you to know that God didn't design you to come here and sit down for an hour and a half, high five some people, and then go on your way. Man, God's called you to be on this exciting journey, to be on this incredible mission, and to find your place on the wall, be committed there, be involved there, be invested there, and to make a real difference. Because when you die, and by the way, it's proven 100% of us will die, and when that happens, your life's supposed to mean something. What did it all mean? All right, everybody say victim. Victim lens. This is the outlook on life that everything's negative. Everything's negative. Whatever happens, because somebody's out to get you. No matter what the situation is, somebody's after you, and everything's negative, and it never works out. And if I didn't have bad luck, I don't have any luck at all, and that's just my life, and everything is like that. Everyone's against me. That's a victim lens. Do you know anybody like that? Just smiles. Okay, you don't want to raise your hand. Cool. I see. All right. Everybody say follower. One more time, follower. This is the person who sees through the follower lens. They're just always saying, where's everybody going? I just need to be there. I just need to go where everybody's going. They're the sheep that's just going wherever the herd goes. That's what they are. They're that person who has no distinct identity, no distinct vision. They don't understand they were designed to do anything great, but they're not necessarily a victim. They're just careless. They're just, oh, let me just go where everybody else is going. Where are they going now? That's where I need to be. And their whole life is dependent on the relationship with the crowd. Everybody say performer. This is the lens that a lot of people get on and they think that they've arrived. This is the person who takes the task head on and gets it done. They accomplish the job. They say, give me some more projects. I can handle that. I'm gonna get it done. I'm going to grind until it's finished. I'm good at that. I can score some points for the team. I'm going to go out and do my thing. I'm good at what I do. Just show me the job. I'll get it done. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a performer lens. I think it's important to have people who perform and say, I'm not going to just sit on the couch. I'm going to go do something. But here's the problem. Performers only think about themselves. They don't think about the team. They don't think about them getting their job done, their task done, what they can accomplish, where they're going to go. And have that lens. Here's the last one. Everybody say leader. A leader lens is somebody who looks out for the whole team. A leader lens is not somebody who just performs. A leader lens definitely is not a victim, and they're not just a follower. They understand they've been created and designed to do great things with their life by God because God is great. And they're saying, God, what is your mission? What is your vision for me? What do you want me to do? And they're out there doing it, but they're not doing it by themselves. They're as a team. How does the team win? And if I make this decision, how's it going to affect everybody? If I say this, how's it going to affect everybody? If I do that, how's it going to affect the team? And a leader lens thinks about everyone. And so when I ask the question, now what lens are you looking through? I'm asking from those four perspectives because when Nehemiah came and he said, guys, God's favor is with us. He's called us to do this. He didn't have the performer lens on, patting himself on the back. He had the leader lens, and he was a talent scout saying, who's good at what they're able to do? He started assigning them places and opportunities to be a part of this. And together, we'll see as we continue to study that they actually fulfilled this job, and they did it in a miraculous amount of time because they came together, because there were many hands that made light work, and everybody had a place. And when they came together under great leadership with a leader lens, they were able to accomplish the impossible. And so I'm just throwing a question out there for you guys. What's next? You know, maybe you have a victim lens, follower lens, maybe you're a performer. You know, what's next? What's next is to let go of the old man and embrace Christ. Put on Christ. Say, God, revolutionize every part of me. Yeah, I know I'm forgiven for my sin, but there's a bunch of things in my life. Revolutionize every part of it. Transform every part of it. Go to Romans 12 and start memorizing it and just praying that and asking God to change your thinking. Let him transform every reference point in your life and let him bring it to the place where he's called you to be. Because guys, no matter how you want to look at it, this world is falling apart. And you can't stop prophecy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that God put you where you are for a reason. We're not supposed to just roll over and play dead until Jesus comes back, right? We're here for a reason. And I want to encourage you to find your place on the wall, that you can be committed, that makes sense for where he's geographically placed you, that you can stand your ground against the attack of the enemy, and that you can maximize your community and be in real family relationships. And as you go through that, you experience victory together. Your faith goes from here to here. And when that happens, God uses you to take other people from here to here. Does that make sense? So what lens are you looking through tonight? As we worship, we're not we're almost out of time, but we got maybe one or two songs. I just want you to ask God that question. Let God rearrange the way you think, the way you see things. And that tonight maybe you just lay it down and just say, God, I'm done. Let me get involved. Let me commit my life. Let me make sacrifice and let me surrender so that I can see things from the right lens and that I can help accomplish this great task. God, I pray as we just finish up that you would just help us to understand this truth. I know we talked a lot more principle tonight than we did scripture, but I pray that they would be encouraged to go back and read through this chapter, Nehemiah chapter 3, and they'll begin to see this. They'll see the strategy, they'll see the people, they'll see their names, they'll see their jobs, they'll see their positions, and they'll realize that it was all purposeful in accomplishing a great task. And I pray tonight that we would just kind of take this truth and meditate on some of these principles and pray through them. And God, if there's somebody new with a victim lens tonight, I pray, God, that they would take that off and say, no, I'm an overcomer. I'm a leader. God has called me to greatness. You know, if somebody in here is a follower, I pray, God, that they would ask, what are the next steps to becoming a leader? And if there's somebody in here walking around with a performer lens, that they would take that off and exchange it, even for the leader Lense. Say, God, how can I help the whole team win? Instead of just satisfy my own needs, how can I help the team win? And while this is not Jerusalem, and the city here doesn't have physical walls that are broken down and gates that are on fire and a temple in the middle, God, we symbolically understand how this makes sense for our city. We see how this makes sense for SDSU, and we see how it makes sense for our own personal life. And I just pray that as we worship you, that you begin to take some of these ideas and make them very meaningful specifics in our life, and that we just entrust you with them. So God bless this time of worship in Jesus' name.